Hi, my name is Dan Roche. I'm the head of marketing here at TalkPoint. TalkPoint's the leading provider of technology and services for interactive meetings and conferences. We're lucky enough today to be joined by Nick Balletta, CEO of TalkPoint, who's agreed to come on camera and answer some questions for us about TalkPoint and webcasting in general. Nick.
Hey, Dan.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Well, we know that I've been with TalkPoint a long time, obviously
Right.
myself, but for those of us who aren't in the know about the long history of TalkPoint,
Right.
can you give us a little background about how the company came to be and how we started out?
Sure. Well, we just re-upped our lease here after being at 100 William Street here as our headquarters in New York for 10 years. Right. We moved here in the year 2000, and prior to that, we ran the business out of Fort Lee, New Jersey, out of the CNBC studios in Fort Lee. CNBC's not there any longer, but that used to be the old CNBC studios.
I believe it's the Univision office.
Right. So back in the old days, our roots go back to a venture known as CNBC Dow Jones Desktop Video, which was a joint venture amongst Microsoft and NBC and Dow Jones. That was way ahead of its time, formed in the mid-90s to distribute CNBC core television content over the internet, using at the time a technology called NetShow, which ultimately evolved into Windows Media. So we had the opportunity to buy the assets from that organization and started the predecessor company called NextVenue. And NextVenue moved into these offices here in New York City in 2000, and we have been here now for 10 years, and we've just re-upped for another 6 years.
Wow. Physically, we're down in downtown Manhattan right now. We've been here for over 10 years, like you said. So we've been here through 2 blackouts, a national disaster on 9/11.
Right.
How would TalkPoint manage to keep running through those events?
You know, it's interesting, both technically and philosophically, right? Clearly, we survived the bubble burst in 2000, and 9/11 was a horrible time for us down here, the blackouts, a couple other economic downturns. But from an infrastructure perspective, we're very redundant, we're distributed, so we have a very strong footprint as it relates to our technology. And the team has been here a long time, and we were able to weather the storm. 9/11 was definitely a very difficult time. For people who don't know, we're 3 blocks east of Ground Zero. So it was pretty hairy for us for those hours right after the disaster, and then ultimately for a couple of weeks later. Fortunately, we did not lose anybody in the company that day.
Along the same lines, dealing with difficulties, the last 2 years or so, 18 months maybe, the economic situation in this country, around the world, really, has really taken a hit. People losing jobs, short-staffed, budgets cut. How's it affected TalkPoint? Or has it affected TalkPoint?
Especially downtown, right? Well, we had some struggles. I mean, we lost Lehman Brothers, we lost Bear Stearns, that were 2 big anchor tenants for us. But I'd like to think that in some cases our business is recession-resistant. I wouldn't say recession-proof. The only business that's actually recession-proof is the mafia. So they say. But I think when you have a situation where people are cutting budgets and cutting staff, they tend to travel less, and they tend to communicate more, right? Or in some cases tend to over-communicate. So leveraging the internet-based communications technologies is something that's a very cost-effective way to do that.
Unfortunately, you end up with crisis communication.
And crisis communication as well. So you notice there's we have a lot of large clients down here who've been going through some tough times, and they're constantly communicating to their constituencies, whether it be their employee base, if it's associated with a troubled situation, with their shareholders, or ultimately with their customers. So we do have some net benefit in that environment as it relates to our industry being recession resistant.
Well, under the expectation that hopefully the worst is behind us,
how
does TalkPoint see themselves keeping that momentum or holding on to customers that have come to adopt an online philosophy?
Sure. Well, we'd like to think we're really good at what we do, and I believe we are, but the tide is really moving in our direction right now, both in terms of video consumption on the internet and technologies being developed by some of the big boys like Adobe and Microsoft and some of the things that Google are doing. So we leverage all those technologies across the board. So it's definitely a major push. We are actually in growth mode. We're hiring and expanding geographically both our technology footprint and our office footprint as well too. And we're hiring across the board, whether it be development people, engineering people, production people, sales people, marketing staff, as you know. So I think timing is good for us. Now we're cautiously optimistic because we're always waiting to see what happens at the macro level. But for us, it's actually been pretty good. But once again, it's growth with profitability, not just growth for growth's sake. I think the growth without profitability was back in the 2000 era. Those days are long over. Now you have to make sure that you manage your growth and manage your cash reserves and how you grow your business.
Webcasting is an industry that's always in flux, at least technology-wise. How does TalkPoint see themselves on the landscape of innovation, change, and how they deal with and how they institute new developments?
Sure. Well, one, we have to keep our finger on the pulse of technology developments that are happening from an industry perspective.
Right.
Whether it's the next version of browser, the next version of encoder by Windows or Microsoft, I should say, or what happenings at Flash, what is Apple doing. So we have to make sure we're there. At the same time, we have to make sure that we keep our own technology platform moving forward from a feature functionality perspective. Right. And I always like to think, and I always like to say, and sometimes our development team doesn't like it, that we don't have an original idea. Right. We listen to our customers, and then we develop feature functionality and technology based on what our customers require. And the decision tree for us is we have to differentiate between what they want and what they'll buy. Right. And we only develop things that they'll buy, and we develop things that can cut across multiple clients. So we're not in the custom development business. So you have to strike a balance between those features and functions and also being aware of what the underlying technologies are across the industry and leveraging best of breed.
Sure. Today, everything's about video.
Right.
TalkPoint has a long history doing audio. Very self-service, easy-to-use audio product. Where do we see, how does TalkPoint see video progression as far as it trickles down to the daily operations in a corporate environment?
Well, we've seen exponential growth on a couple different levels, both in the frequency of the number of events, the number of viewers coming into these events, and also not only the size of the events with larger events or larger viewers, but also downstream with people doing smaller events with video, leveraging their webcams, leveraging their video conferencing units, leveraging their telepresence devices. So we have growth on all fronts, and that is really going to be the future as encoders become more efficient, as media players become more efficient or deployed in every desktop. Broadband is widely pervasive. Operating systems and bandwidth are where they need to be. It's really the trend for us right now, and we're riding the wave. I like to think we're really good, and we are, but really we've got a lot of momentum behind us right now.
And you're just talking about as a society, you're just inundated with video everywhere.
Absolutely.
So, the expectation is that it has to transcend to the business environment.
Absolutely, and it has. And the challenge now is the IT staffs at these large enterprises keeping up with the need. The need won't go away. So, and they're shifting, they're deploying their multicast networks, they're enabling their networks for flash streaming. Their Flash is now moving ahead with HTTP streaming. So there's firewall issues, there's proxy issues, there's browser issues. And we as a technology service provider, we have to be able to work in all flavors and formats. We have to be backward compatible for IE6, which is a huge footprint still in corporate America. Microsoft keeps trying not to support it, but they keep having to extend how long they're going to support it. So not only that, but we have to be ready for HTML5 and IE8 and all the other browsers that are out there and across platforms. And at the same time, provide additional new functionality. So it's really a moving target. It's a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a wild ride. But I think we're in growth mode right now.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for answering some questions.
Thank you.